Hi everyone, welcome to our Smarter Together webinar series. It's great to have you in the new year. Happy New Year. We started this webinar series last summer during our pivot to all virtual, and over the course of last year we had over 1,200 attendees and did 19 different webinars and panels on this topic, on different topics around community research and improving the human condition. That we decided that we should continue this webinar series, and we're very happy to host the first one. This one's focused on the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation, a statewide public-private partnership. And I also have a panel of experts of how they've been able to apply innovation on the ground throughout the state. So welcome. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you are, please mute yourself and keep your video off while we are presenting to not distract the panelists. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to type it on the event chat or on the Q&A. We certainly will have time for questions later on. This webinar is being recorded, so feel free to check it out later again if you want to follow up on any issue. And we're also live tweeting. So if you want to also follow us on Twitter, feel free to do so. And finally, there will be a condensable podcast this later on. So we are really striking all communication cylinders this year. But let's get started. Let me just share my slide or screen for the partnership. So next slide. Like I said, we'll have Karen and Grace and Eric talk a little bit more about their projects later, and I'll keep the introductions fairly short, but I have a quick deck to introduce the partnership. So next slide. So this is our first time really going public on the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation and what it means and how you can get involved, and be really interested to get all of your input and really think more about how to push Georgia on inclusive innovation. Next slide. It started back last year when the Lieutenant Governor created a task force on Georgia innovation, and part of the mandate of the task force was to think about how to provide recommendations to make Georgia the technology capital of the East Coast. And the task force worked during the height of COVID pandemic lockdown and really delivered a stellar report that provided some very strong recommendations on how to push forward on this. But more importantly, what came out of this momentum and energy was the need and a recognition that there was an entity to actually implement the recommendations. So lo and behold, the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation grew out of that need with the explicit mission that it is supposed to implement the recommendations set forth by the task force and really take innovation to the new level. Next slide. One of the big things about inclusive innovation is obviously how we define inclusive innovation. And to us, it's about providing access and opportunities for all Georgians to really innovate, but innovation is not an end state in and by itself. Innovation is used to drive community and economic development. It's recognized that Georgia as a whole has had a lot of success around innovation in certain sectors, areas, groups. However, that innovation hasn't translated across the state in the same way. So we want to continue to support the success that Georgia has had around innovation, but really be intentional about how we can really broaden the tent and attract more sectors and groups and industries and areas to have a chance to innovate and have those opportunities expanded. So earlier, I said that the task force created a set of recommendations. Those recommendations provide the basis or the North Star for what the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation is going to be focused on and become that driving point in terms of our investments. Next slide. What makes us really unique and something that we want to leverage is we want to complement existing organizations that are already doing similar work across the state, but we provide that public-private partnership model, meaning that at the end of the day, we are committed with the state of Georgia, with Georgia Tech, and private sector board of advisors, along with some key partners to provide additional operational support. This public-private partnership structure means that all the entities have skin in the game to really push forward on statewide inclusive innovation, and they're really committed for the long term in trying to foster that collaborative effort and growth. Next slide. And of course, here are our esteemed board of advisors, and we've been very intentional about thinking about different disciplines, experiences, and of course, this is led by our chair, Bud Peterson, who is the former president and president, our Regents professor at Georgia Tech. Next slide. This is the list of some of the pilots that came out of the Georgia Innovates Task Force, and it kind of serves as some preliminary ideas of things that we would want to pursue going forward on the partnership. Again, what we recognize is that innovation can happen at any level and sector. So traditionally, innovation might have been seen only exclusively or solely within startups, but we recognize a larger tent that innovation can happen not only in startups, but it can happen in small businesses, local governments, schools, any Georgia entity, or group that has an interest in product or a program or a service or a tech deployment that is able to scale and take to the next level. We really want to promote that broader lens of innovation and know that there are more Georgia entities that can innovate, and we want to help them to that next level. Next slide. And through these investments over the next few years, we really are going to be focused on creating that portfolio. That portfolio will be consisted of individual projects that we support. And then, of course, each of these individual projects will have its set of performance metrics and targets. But as an aggregate, we want to be able to show that this portfolio of investments is moving the needle on the state of inclusive innovation for Georgia. Next slide. I won't go too much into some of the pilots that we've already invested in because our panel is actually going to go into further detail. But I do want to point out that even though the partnership just launched in August, we are moving very, very quickly and have already completed our first round of funding. And inclusive of that is our Georgia Smart Community Challenge that some of you might have heard earlier, but it is a statewide award-winning program that pairs researchers with the community over the course of the year to implement smart city projects in their community. And it's been a few years running, and now there are 12 active projects throughout the state, all trying to address various issues from affordable housing to transportation to data analytics. The current class is composed of Clayton County, Sandy Springs, Valdosta, and Savannah. Next slide. Ultimately, we do want to look at our return on investment. So we will be accountable not only to the board, but to our public at large, including all of you listening. We will be looking at not only our internal operations and each individual pilot in terms of that metrics success, but again, we want to stay true to the partnership portfolio and the North Star, something that we'll be looking at very closely and thinking beyond the traditional financial return, what's that social impact? And we've looked at this not only in terms of pure calculations or qualitative or quantitative numbers, but next slide. Also qualitatively in terms of our principles of inclusive innovation. We want to see that there is greater connectedness. We are not only attracting, but retaining the talent and growing that talent. We are really reflective of the diversity of the state, that it is sustainable, that the investments that we make, that is a one-time grant, and that program or that service or that product will continue after the grant. And of course, that a unique Georgian identity. we did a lot of homework during the task force research, and it was very clear that we did not want to be another Silicon Valley. We wanted to forge our own path around inclusive innovation, and if our process is stronger in terms of we have a stronger social impact mission, if we have a stronger inclusive way of engaging with the community, then we believe that we will have a stronger outcome and a stronger impact. And so that unique Georgian identity will be something that we want to model ourselves after versus what's out there in that business as usual case. Next slide. And so the timing of this is very well. We just opened up our second round of application requests yesterday, so this is very timely. We are accepting applications for our pilots for this cycle. So if you have a really interesting, innovative idea that follows our mission and our principles, whether it's a program or a service, again, or a tech deployment, we want to hear from you, and we'll be really interested in seeing how we can support and invest in that project to scale. And we also have some really good examples of projects that we've supported even at the beginning. So I will stop at that part before going into the application, but final couple of slides. Next slide is just ways that you can get involved in the partnership, given that we are a very new entity. Obviously, there is the very easy way to celebrate and promote innovation in Georgia. There's something to be said about making sure that the good work is acknowledged, connecting it to the greater innovation ecosystem, and becoming a catalyzing that change for inclusive innovation. Next slide. And of course, this is just our final contact information. So if you want to email us for more information or check out our website, please do that. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you. And let me just get to the heart of the program, which is hearing what exactly is an innovation pilot and how does it actually manifest itself into impact on the ground. So with me, I have a very esteemed panel. So let me just kick it off to Karen from Atlanta Tech Village to start off with her pilot.
Hey everyone, thanks so much, Debra. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone as well, because I've got a few fun little slides for us. My name is Karen, and I'm really glad to be here with all of you. And what you just saw was a short, fun little video that we actually showed to kick off every week of Started Up Georgia, which is a program that we launched this past July. I'm Vice President at Atlanta Tech Village, and I'm also a venture partner with Atlanta Venture. If you're not familiar with Atlanta Tech Village, we are America's fourth largest tech hub. And our mission is to support and inspire entrepreneurs who are on their quest to change the world through technology. So when we talk about inclusive innovation, this is what we love. I also am a venture partner with Atlanta Ventures, and that's where we have a startup studio and also a $20 million fund that we strive to create more businesses and more technology startups. I love what I do, and I'm really passionate about the idea that entrepreneurship really is the single greatest mechanism for changing the world. And our mission, both at Atlanta Ventures and Atlanta Tech Village, and of course the program that we created, which was Started Up Georgia, was to simply help more entrepreneurs start and grow businesses. And that's where Started Up Georgia came from. And I'm talking about Atlanta Tech Village because it was powered by the village and our staff, and then of course a whole slew of amazing partners and friends. So our why, y'all, our why was COVID, right? And so COVID hit, and we were in the middle of July, and Georgia was currently facing the highest unemployment rate on record, which is about 12%. So then when you think about kind of our mission, our vision of entrepreneurship's the single greatest mechanism for changing the world, we were like, how can we do this to leverage and help impact our communities? So the idea Started Up Georgia was born, and the idea is that we would simply lead Georgians from unemployment to business ownership, which would create jobs and stimulate the economy. And the hope is that it would stimulate the economy directly in their own communities because it was a virtual program. And I say simple, it wasn't that simple, and we'll get into it a little bit as we go. But here's an overall look at the program. It was absolutely free. It was a 12-week virtual program that we created that was open to everyone that wanted to launch a new business. And it was a completely pay it forward initiative, and we provided the following things. One of them was mentorship. And what that looked like was finding over 40 qualified mentors who would be willing to volunteer their time and meet with their kind of designated group at least once a week for an hour. So ultimately, they were gifting at least 13 hours of their time for these folks. So the mentorship happened every week. The other thing that happened every week was a practical and tactical learning lab. So we called them lesson labs. And we had 12 different teachers, and we built kind of a curriculum kind of from the very beginning of like intro to entrepreneurship to go to market and funding and how to set up bank accounts. So we tried to make it less theory and more really practical, like what is customer discovery? Who are you going to go talk to? How do you know if your idea should actually be a business or a hobby? So we worked through all those. Community resources, and that came a lot from our different partners and opportunities and connections that we had, from discounts for things, for help with branding and marketing or video. There were a lot of different opportunities that we were able to push out to them. And finally, we offered them the opportunity to apply for funding at completion of the program. So there were no promises. It was all donation based. But any money that we had donated, we allowed them to go through an application at the end to get some money to kind of seed the start of their new business. So how did we do it? Remember when I said it was not that easy? It kind of wasn't, but we had the idea. David Cummings came to me. He's the owner of Atlanta Tech Village and the founder, and said, what if we did this program? What would it look like? And so my team and I were like, great, we can do this. So we literally went from ideation to launch in 3 weeks, which is a crazy, crazy ride. We opened it up to all industries. So even though Atlanta Tech Village, like to be a part of the village, you have to have some type of proprietary technology. That was not part of this program. So that was kind of new for us. So we opened it up to anybody who wanted to have a business. We did put in an application process. We wanted just a little bit of friction to know that whoever kind of filled out this form wanted it. So it was basic information like their employment status, their email, their name, and then we had a short essay question, and it was, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And as long as they put in at least a little bit of effort, we accepted them. So it was a 98% acceptance rate. If they typed in 3 words, I was like, no, you're not ready to build a business. But we did put that in, which I think was really smart to create a little bit of friction. It was run by Atlanta Tech Village staff, so there was myself and 2 others. And we utilized our network, which I'll get into our numbers later, but we had so many amazing partners and teachers and mentors, and that was something that we could not have done alone. So we truly were smarter and better together. Our partners are who amplified our message, which was incredibly valuable to just get the word out, especially since we had a 3-week lead time from ideation to launch. We just started emailing everybody in our network, and we're saying, this is an opportunity, share it, please. Like, let people know in your communities and in your cities that they can be a part of this. And of course, as with any innovation, we iterated as we went and had lots of kinks and different things that we worked through as we went, but it was a really exciting thing to kind of go through. So when you look at who applied, we definitely created the program for Georgia, Started Up Georgia, but you can see that we actually had folks apply from all over, West Coast, let's see, we had Illinois, Michigan, New York, Florida, and we didn't restrict it. So we were like, hey, this is who the program was created for, but again, everyone is welcome. The employment status was really interesting too. Again, the intent was for unemployed, but you did have a lot of people who were, so we were about a third unemployed. You had a lot who had part-time jobs, and then a little less than half had full-time unemployment, but were looking to do their next thing. I know one of the winners of our funding had been a Delta flight attendant for, I think, like 20 years. She had just gotten laid off. And she wanted to start her own business. And so there was a lot of that where it's like, hey, we had full-time employment, but we've had an abrupt change. And we're not ready for retirement, or we still have to pay our bills. So this was who our village was. So we had 709 founders participate in the program. So that was 709 that were accepted into the program. 3 staff, which again were Atlanta Tech Village staff. We had 12 teachers, 43 mentors, and 22 partners. And all of these people were volunteers, which was pretty incredible. And I think a really great example of just the quality of community that Georgia has, and all of the willingness, kind of the city of hospitality in Atlanta even, right? The willingness for us to have a strong ecosystem and help each other. So these were really quality people. Like our mentors were C-suite in Fortune 500 companies. They were entrepreneurs. They were venture capitalists. Our teachers were from a very diverse background too. So it was a really great honor to be able to partner and have so many people be a part of this and be excited about it. I had mentioned funding. It wasn't a lot of money because, again, all of this was just purely donation. So there was no output of cost. So I literally just set up a little donate button through PayPal. It was not a 501c3, but 100% of the donations given through that ranged from an individual giving a couple $1,000s to somebody giving $10. But we ended up raising about $16,000. A couple of that was by mentors who were like, hey, I'm going to match. Like, if my person, like somebody in my group, if this person, I believe in this entrepreneur, I'm actually going to match whatever they win. So if they won $1,500, they would match the $1,500, which was really neat. So 100% of that was directly funded, funneled straight to the entrepreneurs at the end of the program. And then we had a graduation. So we did go through the whole process virtually, which was really cool. And at the end, kind of at the end of the program, we all came together and we did a graduation, and we had a party, and we gave out certificates, emailed to all of them. And the final stat was that we, Started Up Georgia, helped launch 139 new companies. So whoever's thinking about doing new programs, we had no idea what we were doing. We launched it in 3 weeks. And at the end of that, with the good intentions and efforts and hard work from a lot of different volunteers, we helped 139 new companies launch, which was really cool. And 194 individuals graduated. Then that just means some of them weren't ready to launch their business. And we define launch as in, like, this is my idea, I've done some due diligence, I've created my LLC, I've put up a website, like some of the basics around that. Of course, they're still really early stage. But that was a really exciting milestone for us. And of course, I wanted you to see some faces. And these were just examples of, sometimes when you think virtual, it can be drier or harder to be engaging. But I played host every day, and we had speakers come on, and I just did a screenshot of David Cummings and I, and that was during our graduation. We interviewed him, and we would do a lot of people, we did cameras on because it was really exciting that way, and they can meet each other. And we had different breakout groups, and even we did 2 additional programming aspects. So we had the mentor classes every week, the lesson labs every week. And then we had the mentor groups, which were like, gosh, the most valued piece of the program. People really valued that time with their mentors. They would then recommend like 2 or 3 of their top, like most dedicated, top meaning most dedicated. Were they showing up? Were they teachable? Did they want to learn? And then they would recommend them. And then we would take those top entrepreneurs and actually give them additional opportunity to come together and have Q&A sessions with some subject matter experts. So I love seeing faces, because when you talk about numbers, it's really all about the people behind them. So some of our final stats for Started Up Georgia. The $16,000 was granted to 7 different startups. 194 founders graduated, 103 people applied for funding. And that funding required a fairly basic application, but it definitely had a lot more teeth, like what would you use the money for? What is your company? What traction do you have? And then from there, we also required a mentor recommendation. Because again, virtual, like yes, we can track who those, hundreds of people each week are kind of logging in, but who's really doing the work? And that was an amazing opportunity for mentors to build those relationships. And so they had to have a mentor recommendation, which helped us know that this person was dedicated and invested in what they were doing. And those were weighted pretty highly. Of course, we did surveys at the end. 94% of people said the program was very helpful to helping them start and grow a business. And of course, that 139 new companies launched. At the beginning, we had those 709 people accepted into the 13-week program. We had 12 lesson labs, but then, of course, the week later, we did a big graduation celebration, which we had a lot of fun with. On average, about 350 people attended weekly. So each week when we did the live lesson lab, about 350 people would log on, and then we would actually post the recording of the lesson, and then that's where roughly we would get about another 350 views in the next week or two. And also, like, people are working and life happens, and so we wanted to make sure that even though we really wanted that live connection, which we did it at a lunch break on a Monday, that we were really able to be accessible to everybody. 56% were not in full-time work who participated in the program, and of course, those 90% of attendees came from Georgia. And then the grant winners, I love showing this. So we took that $16,000, divided it anywhere between $1,000, $1,500, and $2,000, and then these were our winners. And I love showing them because you can see that it's a variety of companies. And all of these people were recommended by their mentor as having a viable business, being very dedicated, showing up every week, being supportive and kind and encouraging to their groups. So we had RIF Robotics, autonomous mobile robot to help hospitals. We had another software, which was Clove. Software is a customer hub post-sale. Andrea did Blue Honey Homestead, and that was artesian products for the home. A lot of that was bread baking. She actually was the flight attendant who'd been a flight attendant with Delta for like over 20 years and got laid off. And she actually had a lot of success kind of starting and even growing her sales during the program. Stephen with the rural urban connection, he had a whole regenerative agriculture practice to raise grass-fed beef in Georgia here and then deliver it locally. And I know he used his money, I think, oh gosh, I probably shouldn't even say it. It was to buy some big piece of equipment that he needed. Alyssa with Ready, she reskilled low literate adults and helped for job placement. Ashley did a Black Joy coffee and tea counter, which was a mobile counter serving specialty coffee with a focus on Black culture. And then Alan Mead was the Concept Factory Atlanta, which is a collaborative hub for visual storytellers. So amazing people. It was a really difficult choice. Again, we had over 103 people recommend, but we had an outside board kind of come in and we reviewed all the applications, and we tried to do it really fairly. And of course, it's all about the people. So these are the faces behind those companies. And this is what made it really, really special and such a great opportunity to grow a program. So that is Started Up Georgia. In just kind of a nutshell, but it was an amazing program where we had the opportunity to partner with, hundreds of people, all of these communities all over, and create a lot of direct value. I know one of the things I ask a lot is, when are we going to do the next Started Up Georgia? And that's something that we're kind of dreaming and thinking about, but we were so dependent on volunteers that we're kind of in this, we're going to wait and see, I think. But I think we have created a blueprint and shown that it's possible, and it was really successful. And we were really honored to be able to pull the community together to create such opportunity for so many different people here in Georgia and all over the nation.
Thank you, Karen. That
Yeah,
was
thank you.
And that's a very good example of a pilot that went through a full life cycle. But next, I'm going to introduce a pilot that just started. Grace and Eric from the Clubhouse in Augusta. We just awarded our first pilot funding to Grace and Eric for this pilot, and it was a very competitive process. But I have to say this project came up on top and was approved by our board of advisors, and we're really excited to start on this. So, Grace, Eric.
Hi, Grace, you are muted.
Go into the deep dive. Oh, sorry.
You're good now.
You're right. Embarrassing. Hold on. Am I? Okay, everybody can hear and see me. Great. I'll start over. I'm not going to talk about why we all think entrepreneurship is important, supporting startups around the state. I think we're all here and we know that. COVID has especially helped us understand that there needs to be a level playing field for entrepreneurs and startups around the state, and the economic recovery of our state for our community is really, really important. And that's why we're excited to share with you this program that, again, wouldn't be possible without the funding and the strategic team that came down from the Lieutenant Governor's office. So thank you, everybody, for believing in us as we move forward. We did do a program that has mimicked what we're about to launch in Georgia about 3 years ago. It was with a grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and we called it the MESH, and we partnered with 4 other cities around the state, outside of Atlanta, that were rural, that were advocating with disadvantaged entrepreneurs, makers, co-working spaces, independent accelerators, and we had a proven model of what it would take collectively around the state to help support entrepreneur support organizations that were trying to do the work at the local level, at the grassroots level. And so it was really important to advocate for, again, the organizations that were in these communities doing the work, either through volunteerism or either through entities where they might be paid a stipend or a small grant. The thing that we found at the end of that program was, how do you sustain the economic model to support organizations like this in the communities that they're in? Access to funding, competitive grants, philanthropy, supporting programs and events that entrepreneurs couldn't in and of themselves pay for it themselves. And so how do you find that public-private partnership to access the funding to provide the education for the entrepreneurs and startups so that they have the tools, combination similar to what Atlanta Tech Village had, which was, pre-COVID, a hybrid of space, mentorship, access to funding, again, to sort of level that playing field. And so Eric's going to share with you a little bit about what that looks like in the public-private space, and then we'll invite you to listen in on more information on how maybe you or your community could get involved. Over to you, Eric.
So, thank you. So the core thesis around this, from our standpoint, is that the entrepreneur support organizations that are in every community are really the best equipped to handle helping their disadvantaged entrepreneurs grow, and that ultimately it's access to capital both for the startups in their communities as well as the entrepreneur support organizations that's critical. So what we're trying to address through this is really how to leverage the workforce development system to open up funding for both the startup and the organization. And really what that means is trying to understand what are the challenges in leveraging workforce dollars. The first one is looking at industry recognition. So if you think about the Department of Labor in general, it's centered around jobs training to fit into specific industry verticals, but entrepreneurship is something that touches into every industry. So it's much more of a skills horizontal. And so what we do is work with commercial capital providers to serve as an industry recognizing body for entrepreneurship training so that everybody can access the capital they need and get the funding to support the entrepreneurs. So to date, we have 9 commercial capital partners that have signed up to basically ensure that the training and assessment standards that happen in communities are meeting their needs so that they can deploy capital to the startups. The gap that we're trying to fill with this program is really specifically looking at getting people that first 25K or so for their startup so that they can then make it to the point where they can take advantage of the traditional SBA system or the angel investing process. And so it's really getting that first bit off the ground. And so the next piece that we have to solve once we get the industry recognition process taken care of is how to meet all of the different reporting requirements around workforce. So we've developed skills assessments in 4 primary areas, basically business planning. So we look at things like market analysis, resource management, and leadership, among other skills. Then we look at business technologies, and so basically educating entrepreneurs about the digital platforms that exist and issues around data privacy and cybersecurity. Then we look at business law. So how do we ensure that they have an understanding of legal structures, contracts, intellectual property, and such. And then business finance, and that's the base, really the critical nuts and bolts of going through budgets, accounting, and different types of investment capital. After we have all those skills assessments in place, the next piece that we have to look at is the actual outcome tracking related to that. And so with this grant, we're also developing software that allows us to link in with entrepreneurs' accounting software so that we can gather the data around whether they've been able to create a job for themselves, how many jobs they've created in their community, and also then are they meeting the salary requirements around workforce training. So through this, the end result of what we hope to accomplish is that we train 250 entrepreneurs across the state of Georgia, so working with 5 different communities. Once we do that, we should generate recurring revenues for the ESOs to support their work within their community. Roughly speaking, we're thinking this would be around $5,000 per entrepreneur trained, so about $250,000 in each community that goes through the workforce system to support their work. The entrepreneurs would then qualify for capital for their first 10 to 25K. And then through this, if you look at averages, out of every business in the state of Georgia that started, about 80% survived the first year. And out of those that survived, they created an average of 500 jobs, or not 500, 5 jobs. But that should work out to us creating between 500 and 800 jobs over the period of this grant. So with that, I will turn it back over to Grace so that she can share with you more about the give and get related to this program.
Thank you, Eric. The give and get related to this is really intended for everybody who's in attendance today to either consider themselves a potential applicant, or if there's somebody in your network that you think would be eligible, they'll be able to apply. It's going to be an organization or a community or a person tied to someplace in Georgia. We will be sharing this information again through the Lieutenant Governor's office, as well as Debra and her team. The RFP will be later on this month, and then we hope to launch in early spring over the rest of 2021. And again, this is intended to support the entrepreneur support organizations that are doing the good work for their entrepreneurs. What we are expecting from these organizations are to build and obviously leverage their regional network to support this pilot. So that would involve getting their community team excited and amplified in terms of helping in their actual cities to adopt the mesh network software platforms, the things that we're creating that will help monitor all of the data and statistics. They will be launching their local entrepreneur skills training program. And so having a pre-existing curriculum, having access to a curriculum, working with us to make sure that it works with the metrics that we're trying to follow is really, really important. We want them to train at least 50 disadvantaged entrepreneurs over the course of the year. And that, again, is flexible in the sense of is it a cohort every month, every quarter, twice a year, and to also participate in the compliance reporting. So the compliance reporting is really important so that we have, again, the information to show how this program is sustainable in their communities. In return for that, the pilot entrepreneur support organizations, they will get a toolkit. They will get information from us related to certification licensing and what that looks like. They will get access to our learning management software. So they will be creating accounts where, again, we will have this data available. We will have a member management software. So again, collectively in their communities, they'll be able to, in the digital space, communicate with the entrepreneurs that they're supporting. And there's also a compliance management software. And again, this is where some of the financial data that Eric was talking about that will be curated so that we can understand how to best navigate access to capital and have that information available for them. The network collaboration with other ESOs around the state is also really important. We see this as a very pioneering career, not only in Georgia, but across the country. And so getting access to peer-to-peer support is really, really important. It's one of the things that's really exciting about this is that engaging with other communities around the state and seeing what best practices are. There will be access to startup capital. Again, the partnerships that we have with our capital partners involve anything from loan consideration to small grants to possible entry into the angel and venture capital space. There will be some financial support through the pilot to help underwrite these programs for you, anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 to help underwrite some of the operational expenses that you're going to entail getting this thing programmed. And then there is a sustainable program revenue that is going to be able to support the disadvantaged entrepreneurs in your community. And so again, this will be a cycle of funding available not only for you and your team and your staff, but really to manage the outreach in your community and what that looks like to keep the ESO organizations sustainable in the cities around Georgia. Similar to what the Clubhouse does, which again, you can reach out to Eric and I about how we're doing this in Augusta as well. So that's sort of the high level information about this pilot program, and we look forward to giving you more here. Thank you, Debra. There you go.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Eric. And I'll invite Karen back on to the panel to share her screen too for our panel discussion. But again, if we already have a number of questions from the audience, but please keep typing them as we go, and we'll try to answer as many as we go. But just in summary, I think Grace, Eric, and Karen provided examples of two very good entrepreneurial training development programs offered for the state of Georgia. And what was great is that these programs have a very low entry point. You don't have to have a lot of experience. You could be a very non-traditional background or not experienced in this type of work. But these kind of programs will help develop mentor entrepreneurs in the state. So we're really excited to see these programs really blossom. And what's great for Grace and Eric's program is, again, it's just starting. So it's a starting point where they are looking actively for 4 other cities to do this program with, in addition to Augusta. And this 5-city model will then create hundreds of new entrepreneurs each year. And as Grace says, develop a sustainable revenue model so that there will be ongoing support even beyond the 5 cities. So this is something that we're really excited about. Let me just kick off to Grace and Eric first. So, you know, this 5-city model, can you kind of paint to us how that supports regional innovation in Georgia? This is something that we've talked about before. You know, your selection of these different cities throughout Georgia. How can you see this not only promoting obviously statewide innovation, but regional innovation hubs?
So in each community, what we see is that there's different sort of specializations economically and industry verticals where there happens to be a focus. And what this allows each one of the regions to do is to even be able to customize their training programs, so that Augusta, as an example, you know, we're very big into the cybersecurity space as well as the energy space and healthcare. And so I think it's very likely that we will develop programs that center around those activities. And in other communities, I think of Savannah as an example, is very logistics centered. And so it allows each one of these communities to develop a customization of a certification program for their vertical. And it actually becomes a resource then for other people throughout the state, which is one of the reasons we think of this as a mesh network. So how do we leverage Savannah's logistics expertise to help a startup that might be in Rome, Georgia? And so they could potentially take that course virtually.
Got it. And another question that we had from the audience, I'll give this to Karen, especially since you've completed the program with a graduation success that was phenomenal. But the question is, if you can replicate Started Up Georgia in other states. How could you do that? How could you bring that blueprint? You touched briefly on, even continue in Startup Georgia, but there seems to be interest in modeling it in other states outside of Georgia.
Absolutely. Anyone can email me, Karen@atlantatechvillage.com, and I will share all the secrets. So it's something that we learn, trial and error. We love to be an open book. It's not something that we're going to hold close to our chest. So we have a lot of opportunities to share, and I think it would be the most difficult challenge is how much we relied on really, really quality teachers and mentors to volunteer their time. If you are somebody who is good at that or has access to that network, I think you can replicate it quite easily.
I would say too, Deborah, that Georgia's pioneering this around the state. Obviously, this program is really important to us here, but we have already implemented some of this work in other states across the country. So it is certainly a blueprint that Georgia is leading the charge. But we have already had interest from other states, not just in the Southeast, but across the country. And we're sort of in this okay, we're going to do this here first. But yes, we would welcome also the invitation to help other communities do what we're doing.
You have your work cut out for you. So just for all of you of this panel, these are two unique programs to support entrepreneurs in the state of Georgia. Just a broader question, how can we continue to support entrepreneurs in Georgia? What are the other elements, or what kind of areas do you see in terms of best practices or things that we could do better at or continue to do?
So really, in every business, cash flow related to that business is critical. And so I would look at how we can address either providing better access to investment capital for startups, or how we can seek to serve to be first customers for startups. That's really the key. One of the things that we do at the Clubhouse is we will often become first customer for entrepreneurs that are in our space. And it's usually a small contract, but it gives us that really direct mechanism to give them feedback about their business and help them to improve and grow. And then think about the organizations around the state that are supporting startups as well, and realize that they also need capital. I think that Atlanta Tech Village's program is amazing, but you hear the struggle of how do you sustain it when it has to be volunteer led. And I think that's the thing that we all have to get our brains around, is that entrepreneur support requires funding.
Eric, just peel that. Oh, go for it, Eric. Grace.
No, I was just going to add to that I think one of the things that the Clubhouse has really enjoyed is a wonderful relationship with some of the state level entities. When we did our program, Startup Life 2 years ago, we went on road shows to Atlanta. We invited other entities around the state to come and sort of hear the pitch from our entrepreneurs. And so there's Center of Innovation and ATDC, Georgia Tech. I mean, I think there's a lot of state level resources that we as ESOs can sort of leverage as a funnel for information, for contact. Access to capital is extremely important, but a lot of times there's state resources available, helping fill out SBIR grant applications and things. And those are certainly some things that I think could also be amplified around the state.
But
absolutely. I mean, we have a really, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We have a very healthy ecosystem in Atlanta, and of course we need to continue to grow. I think to Eric's point, we have to increase density, right? Which is what we're doing. So all of these different players, I think how it is very community driven, and we all have this greater purpose, and we have a lot of really solid folks in leadership in our city leading the way and asking how can we help. I think funding is, of course, a huge piece. If COVID had not drastically impacted Atlanta Tech Village as much as it has, which we're in there, we're not going anywhere, but the reality is, I laid off 2/3 of my team back in April or May. So if we had had a different opportunity to have like a full staff, it'd be a program that I would be like, we could have done this pre-COVID, we would have kept it going. So that's where we're still in this kind of environment where it's like, what do we do? But a lot of what we do is with capital and trying to connect entrepreneurs to those opportunities. But I think that that's an opportunity to grow for sure. I think especially with angel and seed funding, I think that's something that we need more density of for sure.
Well, I was going to say, Eric and Grace, your pilot actually has a sustainable revenue model. Can you kind of just share a little bit more about that? Like, how can this program be sustainable to continue to train and certify entrepreneurs, especially in these kind of regional innovation hub model that you're developing?
Right. So to really look at it from the top down, from the federal government level, there's $10 billion in workforce development funds that are discretionary, given to the states so that they can administer training. Data then is administered through regional one-stop centers. So every region across the state of Georgia has a workforce development board, and then they have one-stop centers where people who are looking for work can come and access those resources, and then they work to prioritize what training they would fund. This type of training, what we've done is work to meet all of the compliance requirements to access that. And so it, again, would provide the ability to, we think, $5,000 per student that is trained. If you train 50 entrepreneurs in your community, it's simple math, $250,000 to support your community and being able to do the work. If you're in a larger density market, I mean, obviously you'd have to check with your workforce director's budget to know if they can handle more than that, but there's the potential to do more.
Thank you. So let me take this final question from the audience too. The question is, and I can start answering this and then piggyback off Grace, Eric, and Karen for some final words. But the question is, can local governments apply for these opportunities? Are they eligible? And let me just start by saying that actually local governments in Georgia are given 3 possible chances to be working on the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation. The first one is obviously the pilot application that we just launched yesterday, which is accepting projects and proposals that's inclusive of local government. So Grace and Eric are, again, our first cohort and winner of the grant. And so we will encourage local governments to be part of it. The idea is that our tent is very big and that you can be a local government or a school or a nonprofit or a startup, a small business. If you have an idea that's as amazing as Grace's and Eric's, then we would be very happy to support it. So that's one way local governments can be involved. The second opportunity is directly from Grace and Eric, as they will be looking for 4 cities across Georgia. I'm sure that in that criteria, local governments will definitely be engaged in that process if you want to be joined in to develop entrepreneurship and training as part of this Mesh Innovation Network. And then the third opportunity for local governments is through our Georgia Smart Community Challenge that we're actually going to launch our 4th class in March, which is to pair up local government with researchers to focus on a community research project. So lots of ways for local governments to be involved, as well as other Georgia entities to really engage and apply in this inclusive innovation space. We're super excited about this. Let me do a quick final last words on in terms of where do you see innovation and entrepreneurship next year, assuming a post-COVID? You know, what are some key highlights that you wish will happen? And I'll just start with Karen.
First, if I'd love to add really quick to what you were saying for local governments. we're privately funded, privately owned. We didn't have grant money. Debra was an amazing resource and support for us as we were growing the program, as the Metro Atlanta Chamber and several other people. Do not be afraid to ask private business owners to help support run with programs, because we were able to do that. And that was a gift to be able to do that, to have the resources to do. So don't be afraid to rely on that and to be entrepreneurial led and come along as a partner and a resource, because I think that's often when it can be most successful. As far as where we're going to be next year, I hope we're all having drinks and parties in restaurants together, celebrating lots of good things. It's still in the Atlanta ecosystem in technology, we have had 3 unicorns, so billion-dollar valuations in technology startups in the last 6 months, which, is amazing. So looking at like Calendly, they had a $3 billion valuation, and Taupe started at a hot desk in the village with an idea. So these can happen, and I think the more successes that we have and the more our communities and resources come around and lift more and more people up, I think the better that is for the strength of our ecosystem and the opportunity that we have as a city as a whole. So my vision would be that we are together, that we are stronger on the other side of it, and continuing to see entrepreneurs make the greatest impact with small business and stimulating the economy, and hopefully having even more unicorns and great successes with founders who will then turn around and pour back into the communities that they came from.
Yeah, what she said. I think in general, the overarching theme is rising tide for the state of Georgia. And so Atlanta is a great resource. And for those of us outside the Beltline, accessing again, getting some of the capital and some of the mentoring and some of those things around, companies that are in the digital world, cloud, their zip code shouldn't matter. They can get funding, access to information, helping the rural entrepreneurs, whether it's Main Street, lifestyle, mom and pop shops, leveling that playing field for our disadvantaged communities is really, really important. So I'd like to, it's the work we've always been doing. We've been doing this at the Clubhouse since our inception. So continuing that good, deep work.
So I'm a Georgia Tech grad, so I sort of answer it with a math problem, really. If this pilot succeeds, which is our goal here, then what my hope is that across the 20 workforce regions that we have a program in every single one, so that we're training 1,000 entrepreneurs in the next year. That would mean graduating 800, unlocking 20 million in commercial capital to support them, and creating 4,000 jobs per year in a sustainable way where all the ecosystems are able to operate.
And that's a great note to end on, data. So thank you, Eric, Grace, and Karen. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely to have this conversation, but know that the work continues. Stay tuned for our next Smarter Together webinar that's slated for February 25th on community improvement districts. So thank you again, and take care.